and screaming over every single thing that Donald Trump ever says or does.
And the thing you like the most that he accomplished?
I'm happy with a lot of the things that he's accomplished.
Name one.
Neil Gorsuch, the economy, unemployment is way down, jobs are way up, the economy is booming, and ISIS is on the run. What's not to like?
Okay. Now, Chip, I want to go to you, and Mike mentioned the economy, and I'm going to bring up a stat that I'll wager nobody in this room knows. And you might know because Citizens for Limited Taxation, this is a specialty for you. The Gallup organization takes a poll every year on what is the most important issue to deal with. And since 2008, the economy has been either number one or number two, with as many as 40% of the country saying that the economy is the number one problem of this country, or the number two problem. One or two has been the economy for the last 10 years. And I looked at the numbers for 2017 at the end of the year, the first year of Donald Trump. When his term started, the economy was the number one issue. Right now, not only is the economy listed as their number 5 issue, but the number of people worried about the economy is the lowest they've measured since 1999. So I ask you, because again, Citizens for Limited Taxation, the same question I asked Mike: what do you like, what do you dislike, and what does these words about the economy mean? I especially wanted to ask you this.
Yeah, well, number one, the thing I dislike most about him is his excessive use of Twitter. I mean, I don't even know what Twitter is. I mean, it sounds like something a parrot does for sign language or something. But put it this way: if Twitter did not exist, I can't even pronounce it right. If it did not exist, I swear he'd be 20 more points ahead in the polls. Because if you notice, anytime he gets in trouble, even when he says some highly negative things that the people don't like, it's always using that damn device. And if you it turns away from some of his policies that are very good, because they focus on what he's doing with his thumb. I mean, it's just ridiculous. So I dislike that. The thing I like about him is he's done, and maybe we can get this further in the program, but I love his cabinet appointments, especially Scott Pruitt, EPA, and I can talk about that later. But another thing I like is he's done some little things that go under the radar that people don't know. For example, the Federal Register, which deals with a gazillion regulations, it actually reached over 95,000, almost 96,000 under Obama. Trump, in the last year, has reduced that by 32%, the Federal Register. Yes, if most people...
And the Federal Register means the regulations that people have to follow.
The red tape, the things you have to do. Another thing he did was, Obama administration had a Title IX letter, which basically was sent to colleges to eliminate due process in sexual assault cases. He got rid of that letter, so that now anyone charged, whether in male or female, admittedly mostly male, has rights. And it's not, she said, all right, she said this, all right, you buddy are out of college. That's the way these colleges have turned into, without giving the guy a hearing, anything under the Bill of Rights, that's gone with these colleges. The Trump administration has gone after that. One other thing, he's gone after the MS-13 gangs. The MS-13 gangs, mostly Salvadoran, based mostly in California, are a murderous bunch of assassins. They murder, they kill, they use a machete as their main topic. And Trump is going after that group. He's getting the FBI, he's getting the feds to hunt down these murderers, and something the Obama administration never really dealt with. In fact, I got a quote from the Boston Globe. They called them, Trump called them animals. What the Globe called them was just a bunch of highly organized gangs of immigrants. That's what the Globe called MS-13.
I don't remember the Globe ever referring to the mafia as a highly organized gang of immigrants. And maybe it's just because I'm Sicilian, that never hit me there.
The only thing, the line I remember about the mafia is when I talked about the Rhode Island economy, and I said, the Rhode Island economy is so bad, the mafia has laid off 3 judges.
All right. Now, the next person to talk here is Diane, but you mentioned something that was one of the questions I've been passed, And I'm going to ask this question first before I go to Diane, because I want to play on this because you brought it up. One of the questions I have in my hands, and if you haven't written down a question, feel free to write down a question and pass it up, and it'll get to me. The question was, does the team wince or cheer at Trump's tweets? Is Trump a disciple of Sun Tzu? Now, I'm going to ask you to answer that question first, Diane, because I know what my answer is. And we've got Chip's opinion on this right now. Yeah, go ahead, go for
I
it.
love his tweeting. I love it, I love it, I love it. And I love it because the man is brilliant. You have to see beyond. You have to see beyond. Okay, so he...
Am I on the griddle here?
yes, you are. Yes, you brought it up. So he's brilliant when he does that because he's getting so many more people involved. They're paying attention. He's getting his name out there. He's distracting from some things and bringing attention to others.
And I want to jump in
Wonderful.
as you said that, because every
Wonderful.
time President Trump tweets, and I wrote a post about this very early when he announced, and I showed the number of Twitter followers, how the only person who had as many Twitter followers running as Trump was Hillary Clinton. And now literally he can reach, 43 million people follow him on Twitter, which is more than all of the broadcasts.
Across the globe.
Across the country.
People love him in other countries.
Well, a lot of people
They
who
do.
follow him don't necessarily love him on
No,
Twitter.
I get it,
let's be
but
fair.
what I'm saying is, he's role modeling what a leader, what a strong leader, right? And he's doing that despite everybody saying not to tweet.
Now, I want to get Mike's comment on tweeting, because I know you, because I'm going to go to you next. As soon as Diane's
And
done with
I'll
hers,
be
I'm going to
quick.
go to you, Chris. So, did you
I'll
comment
be
on the
quick.
tweeting?
Trump would not be president without his Twitter account. He just wouldn't. I don't mind the tweets. I was saying this to Matt before the event began. I cover politics for a living. And being from Massachusetts, I have plenty of liberal friends and I have liberal family members. They follow Trump's Twitter feed more obsessively than I do.
And so they'll get an information before the media can report on it, so they get Trump spin first.
They do. And in terms of that, you have to remember, it is social media. It's a social media platform. And it allows him to go directly over the heads of the mainstream media and speak directly to the people.
Okay, Diane, I want you to have a chance to finish. What were the thing you liked the most and the thing you were disappointed the most?
So the Supreme Court, because that's our future, right? And that's our kids' future. That's the future of the country. I have to honestly say, even if he says something that raises an eyebrow of mine, I always think there's something next coming. So I don't settle on one particular thing because I feel like he's like Bill Belichick, the two of them, right? They're always thinking like 3 or 4 plays down the line. And so I just wait. I'm very patient.
So there's nothing that you have to
I
criticize?
just wait to see how, but I do want to say that the press, they do know what they're doing, because remember, a lot of people in the press have relationships with people in politics or relationships with people in business, and this is a war, and President Trump is going to affect the money that goes into their pockets, so of course they have to go hardcore against him. And so I don't know that I expected it at this level, but I knew they weren't just going to lay down.
Okay. Christopher, what you liked the most, what you liked the least, and you already commented a little bit about the Twitter, but feel free to expand on that.
Well, first of all, you need to understand that media is running the same leftist gambit and propaganda that they've been running since Walter Cronkite claimed that the war was unwinnable. Yep. It's what the media says. Ipso de facto, from God's lips. That's it. That's what they say. The great thing about Donald Trump using Twitter is that, and I concur what Mike said, I think it's absolutely fantastic. He does get right to the point. 43 million people, more than most of the media, roughly plus or minus half of his actual voter base, and people follow it. And what's happening here is that people see the tweets, and it's causing something that we haven't seen in a long time in this country. It's causing the people to actually look at the tweet and do their own research. Usually what happens, again, the left is using the same Walter Cronkite axiom. It's like, the left says it, everyone's like, okay, what's for dinner, honey? They just believe it, and that's it. Donald Trump is tweeting, and people are saying, well, what is that? Oh, well, I gotta go look it up. And then they figure it out. So I concur with what Mike had said over there. Also, you need to understand, Chip had said something about him. If he tweeted less, his polls would be bigger. First of all, folks, polls now are circumspect. There was a time when Zogby and Rasmussen were the only two that you could trust because they actually went to voters, registered voters. But as we saw in 2016, even those two organizations were compromised. So anytime you hear an ABC, CBS, even a Fox News poll saying Trump is this, Trump is that, down 22%, disbelieve it. Completely throw it away, because these are the same polls that said that Hillary Clinton was 97%.
Now, what was the thing you liked the best and the thing you were most disappointed with over the last year?
I was disappointed with absolutely nothing.
Really?
Absolutely nothing. Everything he's done, even the things that at certain times people say, well, Donald Trump failed in this. Donald Trump, first of all, never fails. Let me tell you something about the great thing about business negotiation. I took some notes here. Let me tell you something about the great thing about business negotiation. First of all, and it works in politics too, ask for everything. I want the entire kitchen and the sink as well. Then you do negotiate down from there so that you actually end up with what you actually want. And this is how Donald Trump operates. Donald Trump asks for the kitchen sink, and then he ends up getting what he wants. Look at what happened when he had that meeting, and he let the press in there for 45 minutes, and he said, give me any bill, I'll sign it, whatever. Everyone immediately jumped, oh, Donald Trump's selling us out. Nobody gets Donald Trump. Nobody understands. He's asking for the kitchen sink. He's asking for everything. And then he went on the press the next day and he says, no, DACA's off the table, the wall is still on the table. No, nothing's changed. Which is why we're at the shutdown now, because the Democrats are like, what the hell's up? We can't figure this guy out. And let me wrap this up, I'll let you go on. I had Scott Lively on the show the other night. One of the great things Scott Lively pointed out, I knew this, but Scott Lively alliterated it very well. Donald Trump is doing this over here. He's doing this over here. And everyone's paying attention to this over here. Meanwhile, he's doing this over here. And no one's paying attention to that. Go ahead.
All right, I want to touch on something that you said that is also one of the questions that we were asked, since you just mentioned the government shutdown, and that's in the news right now. This question says the Democrats were going to shut down the government to see, as a matter to distract from the Trump dossier news that's come out. And it's very interesting. There's a classified report concerning the Trump dossier, and something has happened that happened back in 1996 when this Ken Starr report came out on Bill Clinton, where Republican after Republican before impeachment went over there and read it and came out astounded at what was being reported, but Democrats religiously refused to look at it. And other than the Democrats who were actually on the Intelligence Committee, no Democrat has gone to read that report that all the members of Congress have a chance to read. Do you think, one has.
One.
Okay, I stand corrected. Well, you're later in the, which one?
I
Do you
don't
happen to
know who it was.
Oh, there was one.
But according to Laura Ingraham last night,
There was one. So I want to go through the panel here and a very quick question and answer on this. Is the shutdown a distraction by the Democrats? Is this them trying to feed their base on DACA? What's the business with the shutdown? I ask you, Mike Lachance.
This also goes back to something that Matt and I were discussing before the event began. In case you haven't noticed, the left has a very recognizable pattern when it comes to how they perceive the right. And they always do the same thing. First, they ridicule us, then they copy us. So, in the beginning of Obama's presidency, the Tea Party formed. It was a true grassroots movement, and it was roundly ridiculed and mocked by Democrats and the social justice warrior crowd and their media allies. What did they do a few years later? They formed the Coffee Party. Then they formed, and that didn't work. So then they formed an organization called No Labels, and that fell on its face. And then finally they formed Occupy Wall Street, which was the filthy version leftist version of the Tea Party. And if you hear them now, I mean, this whole quote-unquote resistance movement is the left trying to replicate the Tea Party and the success of the Tea Party.
Acorn and shit.
Oh, and well, that was before. But at any rate, to answer your question, what the government shutdown is all about, in my humble opinion, what the Democrats are doing is they saw that the government shutdown, when was the last one? 2010, 2014?
No, it was 2013. 2013. That was.
That government shutdown did not hurt the Republicans in the following midterm election. And I think that the Democrats are they're copying, they're trying to replicate. They see a success and they try to replicate it. I think that that's part of it. I think that they keep talking about this blue wave that's coming in 2018. I'll believe it when I see it. I mean, if it happens, it happens, but I do not believe it. But I think that they're trying to replicate the success of the Tea Party. They're trying to follow the same game plan that led the Republicans into power.
Okay, Chip, the shutdown and the blue wave comment, and given the economy, is that blue wave about to hit a rock?
Well, just on the government shutdown, I probably experienced 3 or 4 of them over the last 20 or 30 years. And you notice one thing, they never last long. And the reason they don't last long is, and the Democrats and Republicans both know this, is that if the shutdown went on and on for weeks or months, no one would notice. And they would say, the feds, my God, this has been a holiday for us. So they make damn sure they're short.
It's actually worth mentioning that there's a big difference between this shutdown and the last one. You'll remember the last shutdown, the President Obama made it a point to try and make pain. This time the president has said, and the administration has said, people will still work, they just won't get paid yet, because what happened in the other shutdowns is people didn't work. When the shutdown was over, they were paid for the time they didn't work. This time they're apparently expected to work if they're going to get paid for it.
The second comment about the blue wave, supposedly the Democrats are going to take over Congress and possibly the Senate. We're in January. This election is in November. And in politics, that's an eternity. I mean, things can turn. Yeah, you could have a blue wave right now, possibly. But next summer, something might happen that turns it completely around, that the Republicans overwhelmingly retain Congress. I mean, it's just way too soon to even remotely predict what's going to happen in November. I mean, I think even the Democrats would concede probably the Senate. It'd be almost impossible for them to take over the Senate. And then they're talking about some of these congressional seats are going to go, possibly a few. But they've actually, both parties have made sure that the requirements and the fundraising and everything has so favored incumbents. It's very, very difficult to beat an incumbent, especially in Congress. And so I don't see I don't see anything right now. I think until you get to the summer, and at the very earliest, are you going to notice any trends?
Okay, Diane, let's go to that.
Can I answer that, Peter?
Was that your question that you were asking?
Well, what he just said, unfortunately right now, it looks like a lot of the incumbents are not going to run again.
Well, that's something that we'll touch on. Now, Diane,
Just
on
one quick comment. The first Bush presidency, after the Gulf War, he had something like a 90% approval rating. It was the highest, I think, ever recorded. And less than a year later, he gets beat by Clinton.
Now, Diane, that's actually, I'm going to raise 2 points with that, because we're talking about the shutdown, we're actually merging a lot of questions at once right now, because we have somebody asking about Trump's 30% approval rating. Government shutdown, the Trump approval rating, the election coming up. What is going on with this? Are Democrats in a bubble, not seeing what's happening, or are we in a bubble, not seeing what's happening?
I think I liked what Mike said about, the Democrats wanting to shut down the government because it worked well for the Republicans. So I do like that, but I think something very basic could be going on. I think that they're testing Daddy. I do. I think they're testing Daddy to see how far they can push the limits. I do. I think there's some level because...
Now, are they trying to separate him from the Republicans in Congress, do you think?
No, I think they're fighting for their money and their power.
Yeah.
That's all they care about because, let's face it, there are Republicans who are on the same camp as they are, right? So he is threatening their bank accounts, right? All the promises that they made to all their people that keep them in power for years and years and years, he's a threat to that. So I think that they're pushing him. But there are three things that are going on, or that have gone on. One is the dossier. So whoever asked that question, yes, it could be a distraction to that. But remember, Hawaii had a threat, right? Was it last week?
Last week, the false alarm.
I was listening to the news, and right before the threat, that the news report came that the threat, a reporter came on and said that there was news about the Las Vegas shooting. And then it was within 10 minutes, the Hawaii threat thing, we got the news about that. And I think that there are things there with that Las Vegas shooting that it seems like every time a reporter puts something out there, it gets nixed. So I think there is something going on with that.
There is some new news concerning that. Now, Chris, I want to go to you on this. And again, you talked about not trusting the polling, the Trump's polling over there. I talked about the polling concerning the economy. Is this a distraction? Is there a blue wave? Is the Trump's popularity actually a problem going into the midterms? Or is it too early, as Chip was saying, to even think about this?
The answer is no, no, and no. First of all, the shutdown is Democrat suicide. They are basically basing this entire thing on DACA and protecting illegals over paying our military, which is fighting the war of our generation. That's basically it. That's basically it. While the press, and as I said before, the Walter Cronkite axiom, while the press will constantly blame the Republicans, what I just said a second ago is actually what is. As usual, as in 2013, 2014, and I went down there with the Worcester Tea Party about the whole defunding of Obamacare. I went down there for that rally. It was the same thing. The Republicans gave the Democrats everything they wanted except this one thing. They stood on their principles. Defund Obamacare. They did the same thing again now. We gave them everything. CHIP, a continuing resolution, funding for whatever silly program they wanted, except no DACA. We'll revisit it in March. This is the other crazy thing. It's not being revisited until March. It's not even up. And the Democrats said no. Gave them everything. Like spoiled little children. We gave you everything, and you're still not happy. This is Democrat suicide. So the blue wave, to hell with that. That ain't gonna happen. People will remember this. This is exactly how the Democrats operate. Diana Ploss said this earlier, it's about power. I've written about this many times on my blog, talked about it many times on my show. It is never about parity, it is never about equality when it comes to the Democrats or with liberals. It is always about power.
All right, we're going to get to the next question. Before I get to the next question, I want to remind everyone that there's still one more shot to hit the buffet, so go and hit the buffet if you want some food. The food is good. They're going to stop serving that in about 10 minutes, so if you want some more food, go and get it. Our people at the panel will not be insulted. They'll just be jealous because they're not going to get a chance to get it yet.
But before you go on, I want to talk about the dossier really quick. This Trump dossier has been completely invented. We are seeing completely throughout the news the entire exposure of Christopher Steele, Fusion GPS, the DNC buying it, the FBI buying it. The Podesta leaked emails, WikiLeaks, even Julian Assange has been on Sean Hannity's shows 6 times with an in-depth interview. And Julian Assange has openly said on those 6 interviews, no, the Russians didn't do it from afar. And he says, well, how do you know that? He says it's because of what they call the baud rate, B-A-U-D, the download rate.
That's the download speed, by the way,
Right.
for those of you who aren't technically
Any of
blind.
you who ever do anything on your computer, you have a stick, right? It's like, oh, I want to download this file. You stick the stick in, you hit send, blah, and it like zip lines. And there it is on the thing. If you try to download something from the internet, it's like, well, I think I'll go have a cup of coffee, maybe go take a leak or something, and then I'll come back and it'll be halfway up there, right? So the entire concept of the Podesta emails being leaked by the Russians, and the Russians are they're spying and they took the Trump election. It was false, because what WikiLeaks was able to find out is like, yeah, this stuff happened somebody was sitting down at the computer and they stuck a stick in there because of the baud rate, the download rate. It's boop, there you go. Pull
All right.
the thing out, throw it in your pocket, go. So the Russians could not have either hacked the election, hacked Donald Trump, hacked Podesta. This was done from the inside by the DNC itself.
Okay, let's let Mike comment on that, and then I want to get to the next question, because I tell you, you guys have some great questions here. You're making my life a whole lot easier, because you're asking you've got some great questions here, some of which I was getting ready to ask myself, so.
I'll be brief. I just want to follow up to what Chris was saying. For anyone who is not aware, the left, and when I say the left, I mean sort of the base of the Democratic Party, not necessarily elected Democrat officials, although some of them too. But what I'm talking about now is the base of the Democratic Party, the social justice warrior left. They have two goals right now. If you're not aware, they have two goals. Their number one goal, 14 months after the 2016 election, is still to remove Trump from office. They are still trying to declare the 2016 election null and void so that they can remove Trump from office. That's their number one goal. Their number two goal, if they can't remove Trump from office, is to communicate directly to Democrat leaders to not let Trump achieve anything. And that is another reason why the shutdown is happening, is because if they can't remove Trump from office, then the second best thing that they see is just paralyzing him.
Okay, I want to get to this next question, and it plays on that, and I'm going to start with you on this Chip. And he talked about 2020 and 2018. Can you comment on the country's changing demographics for 2020? You know, is it going to be DACA kids, illegal immigrants? And I saw on CNN yesterday them talking about the president's speech at the March for Life and how Trump is the ultimate base politician. Is the GOP base going to be enough to win in 2020? And now that the Democrats know that Michigan is in danger, now that they know that Wisconsin is in danger, now that they know for sure that Pennsylvania is in danger, and even Minnesota, will we see shenanigans that they didn't bother to do last time because they figured Hillary had it in a cakewalk?
Well, in the spring of 2016, might even been summer, Ann Coulter wrote a column, I remember it vividly, in which she said, don't despair about the black turnout, the Hispanic turnout that's going to croak the Republican Party. Think about an increased white male turnout. And she was the only one preaching this. Everyone else said, no, you know, we got to go and check out all these other groups. And she, I don't know, is this still on? Yeah. And she was right in her calculation because the white male turnout did increase. But the other thing you got to notice is the number of illegals flooding into the country has dropped dramatically. Even Republicans have to admit that it's dropped. I think a couple of years ago it was because of the economy. Now it's because of increased surveillance. The wall near Yuma, I have gone on 3 border tours in the last 5 years with the Center for Immigration Studies. And we go right along the border. We did one along Yuma, San Diego, Tijuana, and we talked with border officials. And they said, the wall has worked, despite what they say about the wall. He said, we used to have 400 come over a night from Tijuana into San Diego. Now it's maybe 20 or 30 at most. And they have helicopter surveillance. They have increased helicopter surveillance. They have about 5 times as many border patrol agents along the border, going along California, New Mexico, Arizona, Texas, than years ago. So that has stopped that group of people from coming in.
And it's also worth noting, by the way, that I don't know if any of you have seen this in the news, but they have been testing wall prototypes, and they had Army commandos trying to get over, and they've decided, okay, this wall high enough is going to stop people. And despite what Jose Ramos and other people are saying. So is this going to be a base election next time around? Or are the demographics going to hurt the Republicans?
I don't think the demographics are going to change that much. For example, if you look at the birth rate for evangelicals as opposed to, let's say, liberal Democrats, the evangelicals, 3 or 4 or 5 children per family. The Cambridge liberals, maybe 1 or 2. So you've got that birth rate trend that's going to help the Republicans. And I think a full-blown effort for the Hispanic vote is going to help tremendously, because Hispanics are very family-oriented, which is what the Republicans are. They're family values. And if that hits a nice chord with the Hispanics, the Democratic Party is going to be a minority party for decades.
Okay, Diane, I want to switch with you because there's 2 issues that I think have been huge. First, the economy, as I've already alluded earlier, and of course ISIS. I mean, you're with Act for America, which is the largest national security lobby around here in the country. In the country, and ISIS. When Obama was president, they were calling ISIS the second team. Now they actually are, because the president has let our military do what it does best. Is this going to be a base election? Are the demographics going to hurt the president? Or is this going to be a results election where they see how the country is and say, I don't want to change?
I think you'll see, I think he will get more votes. I do. And to add on to to illegal immigration, the number of refugees coming into the country is way down. And the refugees that were coming over would have high birth rates. So that will actually help. In terms of the population. But you had asked a question earlier about how the economy went from being number 1 on people's minds to number 5, and I think having a very strong president has caused people's anxiety to go down, and so because their anxiety has gone down, then they're not thinking about it as much, and they're seeing that the jobs are being created, and they see the future for their kids and for the grandkids. So I think that's one of the reasons why it went from 1 to 5.
All right. Chris?
No, I agree with what Diana just said. James Carville, famous Democrat, is the economy stupid. But he was right in that great saying. But because we have a resurgence in the economy, I think the American people are able to focus on more of these other tangible issues that we have to face. If people don't have jobs, they can't get a paycheck, they can't pay their bills. As much as terrorism might be a concern, as much as illegals might be a concern, all these other issues might be a concern, it does take a back burner. I'm not bringing in a paycheck. You, everybody. It's your family, it's your children. This is what you got to do. So it does take a back burner. But now that this is happening, now we're able to focus on these things. I want to cover a couple of things here before we move on. Roger Stone gave a great interview a little while ago. He called it the ABC principle of how to